Who is hyped for the keynote speaker of the night? One more time, who is hyped for Austin Petersen? That's what I thought. Alright, as if he needs an introduction, but I will introduce the speaker who will introduce Austin Petersen. Her name is Savannah Soto, and she has literally been my number 2 this entire conference. Like, basically everything you see at this conference has Savannah's name on it. She's taken initiative, she's gone above and beyond her role as conference director, co-conference director, but honestly, we've had the same duties. It's been amazing. So, without further ado, Savannah Soto to introduce Austin Petersen. All right, so I guess you guys heard that Austin Petersen was speaking tonight. So I can leave that part out. Anyway, today I want to talk to you guys about the 2016 Libertarian candidate for president, Austin Petersen. Austin Petersen is the owner of Libertarian Republic and also Liberty Viral. He's the founder of the Stonegate Institute and of the Loki PAC. He gets 2 million social media hits per month. How many of us can say that? Not me. Okay, so without further ado, your keynote speaker tonight, Austin Petersen.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Testing 1, 2. All right. We've got it going. And we are live streaming tonight. Don't forget to be dank memeing for me, Martin. Thank you. You know, the funny thing is I've run for president. I've been all over the country. I've had to give speeches in front of big audiences, small audiences, and the back of bars and things like that. That's what you do when you're a libertarian. But I still get nervous. All right. And just so you know, actually, I was a musical theater major. And so we learned that if you don't get nervous before a performance, then something's wrong. You should always have a little bit of nerves. And also, is there anybody here who's a liberal arts major? Anybody who has liberal arts? Okay, just so you know, there's hope. Okay, there's hope. So don't worry about it too much because even liberal arts majors can one day run for president of the United States. But today I want to talk to you about a concept that I'm working on for a big project that's going to be coming out here in the next few months, I'm hoping. And it's called bumper sticker libertarianism. And if any of you watched the John Stossel debates, one of the criticisms that was leveled at me during my campaign was that I spoke in a series of bumper stickers, slogans or phrases or memes. And this was supposed to be an attack, right? But if you've never run for president before, then you might not know that when you're in a debate, you usually will only get about 60 seconds to explain your concepts or ideas to the public. So how can you explain a concept like abortion in 60 seconds? How can you explain Austrian economics in 60 seconds? The truth is you just can't. So I've come up with a series of bumper sticker phrases and concepts that I'd like to share with you all tonight. And encourage you all to find ways to open up your lines of communication to the public in a way that they can find palatable. Because that's how Donald Trump won his election. Donald Trump won because of MAGA, Make America Great Again. Oh my God. But that's how Donald Trump communicates. They say that he spoke on a 3rd grade level. And that's how he was able to reach a larger variety of people. Because libertarians, we're nerds, right? Like, we read books. What's wrong with us? Right? Right? And it's worse if you're a nerd's nerd. Because not even nerds like nerds. And like, libertarians are definitely nerds. So in order for us to communicate our ideas to the general public, I started breaking down our concepts into a series of bumper sticker phrases. Some of these are bumper stickers and slogans, some of them are not. But the first one is, I think you can all be familiar with, when a conservative calls you a liberal calls you a conservative, and anarchists call you a statist, you're probably a libertarian. All right. Does anybody remember the awful tragedy, the shooting that happened in Orlando in that nightclub? Well, if after that shooting in the nightclub in Orlando you found yourself simultaneously defending the rights of gun owners, gays, and Muslims, you just might be a libertarian. But truly, the whole point of that, when you're defending the indefensible, you're defending the scoundrel, that the point of that is that there really is just no tragedy that justifies taking away the rights of innocent people. And that's the core of what it is that I want to pound home, is that just because there is some great tragedy and a politician starts standing on the graves of dead children, like Hillary Clinton did the other night with guns, which we'll talk about the other night, it doesn't justify taking away the rights of innocence. It's just like, it's very paternalistic, because what the politicians are doing, in a sense, are the same things that your bad teachers did when you were a kid. It's like one kid throws a spitball, so nobody gets to use paper, essentially. Right? You don't get to punish everyone in the class just because one of the kids is acting up. One of the questions that comes up frequently, and especially in debates or with people who aren't familiar with it, is what does libertarianism mean? And I think that libertarianism, essentially, if you boil it down, means that being fiscally conservative and socially whatever you want, just don't force it on anybody else. Essentially. Doesn't mean being socially liberal. Doesn't mean being socially conservative. It means that you can be whatever you like. Just don't use government to enforce your narrow version of morality. And it's funny because people are always like, Austin, why are you running as a libertarian? You'll never be taken seriously. But whenever somebody says, if you want to be taken seriously, if libertarians wanted to be taken seriously, it's usually followed by some form of, you need to be a statist on X, right? No, actually, I'd rather be thought a fool and live free than be a statist and taken seriously. And being ignorant is kind of like being asleep. You're probably going to be angry at the person who wakes you up. Right? Oh, and here's another bumper sticker for you. If I was on the debate the other night with Trump and Hillary, I would have asked them both this question. If taxation of 100% of your income is slavery, at what percentage is it not? Think about that one, Batman. Truly, socialism fails because if food is a human right, does everybody deserve equal access to truffles? $300 a mushroom? How about steak? Which foods are guaranteed? And who determines what is necessary? If healthcare is a human right, then what if the doctor wants a day off and he's the only guy on the island and he wants to take a day off? He's the only guy who can perform heart surgery. Do you send guards to bring him in to do the surgery? Is there a death panel that decides if the patient lives or dies? No, you have to allow the market to work and accept pricing over state planning, because when prices are high, competition works, entrepreneurs step in, but when there simply is no easy access to a supply of goods, something like steak or truffles, then no amount of state violence in the world can possibly guarantee delivery of goods and services. The progressives kind of remind me of syndromes. Have you ever seen The Incredibles? Progressives are kind of like Syndrome from The Incredibles. Right? They work to create policies that will fail so that they can swoop in and pretend to be heroes, offering their state-sponsored solutions. Obamacare, for example, was meant to destroy our healthcare system so that Democrats could come in and offer single payer while blaming the destruction on free markets. And when everybody's super, no one is. Right? And also, I'd like to just say that I disagree with this idea or this concept that anyone should promote voting for Jill Stein or Evan McMullin or any other third-party candidate. They say, some people say, well, if you're a progressive, maybe you should vote for Jill Stein. And one of our libertarian leaders recently said that on national television. He said, well, she's really good on foreign policy. But that's naive, because the idea that a progressive promotes a foreign policy of non-interventionism or civil liberties at home is laughable. Because sooner or later, the growth of the state will lead to a loss of liberty at home and abroad. Anyone who is promoting a progressive candidate due to their stances on civil liberties needs a history lesson on what happens when you put into policy when you put into place a policy of total state power. It's funny because America, we fought this war against the forces of fascism only to have one of our major political parties embrace its core tenets years later. And we fought a Cold War against communism only to have the other party embrace its core tenets. What happened? A lot of libertarians we can tend to be conspiracy theorists, and that can be a pejorative. They say, oh gosh, we've got to stop the New World Order. But don't we want a New World Order? Libertarianism is the desire for a New World Order based on free markets and free people. I think that the old world that must pass away is the world of socialism, tyrants, dictators, statists, and authoritarianism, as well as petty nationalism. I think that individualism will give rise to a new way of thinking, that one that abandons tariffs, taxes, and impediments to the free movements of peoples around the globe. I think borders and nation states must eventually pass away naturally as we seek to unify the planet under a global capitalist regime, where no government or entity may abrogate the individual rights of all individuals, regardless of race, gender, creed, or nationality. Now, how we get there is the war of ideas. And we don't win that fight by surrendering words like true liberalism or true globalism. Because what is a liberal? I'm a liberal. If you consider yourself a libertarian, then you're a liberal. That means more freedom. What about globalization? Globalization historically has always meant free trade. It means a lowering of barriers to international trade. That's what economists consider globalization. But now, because of, I think, a bit of intellectual inbreeding in our movement, we've allowed ourselves to be taken over by those who say, oh, well, globalism and globalization is bad. Well, global statism is bad, but not globalization, not free trade. Donald Trump is advocating for a form of isolationism. So we need less statism. We need less impediments to trade. So I consider myself a globalist. That's very controversial amongst our own people because we have been brainwashed, I believe, to think that globalism is inherently bad. Well, it's not. Globalization has contributed to the lifting up of poverty of a billion lives saved in the last 50 years due to free trade and capitalism. That's mostly been in third world countries, but that's what happens when you have free trade. And how are we going to claim victory when we allow opponents to redefine our language? If somebody takes something from you, then by God, you take it back. We are liberals. We are the true liberals. And we shouldn't allow the statists to redefine our language. And honestly, I do think that eventually the end of nation states is inevitable. But how we manage the decline of nation states is the essence of distilling what worked with what didn't. Now, our job as libertarians is to ensure minimal central planning and decentralization as we preside over the decline. All right, so let's talk about this current election. So we know Hillary's evil. We know Gary's great. We know Jill's nuts. And we know Darrell Castle is, well, he's not going to win. So, but I mean, it's funny because Republicans are now telling us that we have to pass the Donald to find out what's in him. No thanks. No thanks. Right? And what's interesting about Trump's whole faux macho culture is that his movement is led by an effeminate gay man who leads an army of straight men only supporting Trump because they're all terrified of a woman. Yeah. And for those who claim Trump is better than Hillary because we might avoid a nuclear war with Russia, was his talk about using nukes against ISIS just locker room talk? And honestly, I prefer the way that Gary Johnson bombed Aleppo to the way Hillary Clinton bombed Aleppo. And some people have accused Gary Johnson of being a progressive infiltrator, but then I have to remind him, no, that was Donald Trump. Yeah. But I will say one thing good thing about Trump. He did learn early on that it's much better to own a politician than to be one. You know, some argue that Trump would keep us out of war, but, you know, I got to take a look at his record here for you guys. I want you guys to know a little bit more about Donald Trump's record, and I've pulled this for you guys. He advocated for the invasion of Libya, as well as implied in his book that he'd potentially issue a first strike on North Korea. Now, what are some of Donald Trump's positions? He's got gun control, stop and frisk, a progressive income tax, assassination of whistleblowers, and universal government health care. So shouldn't Hillary and Trump technically be running on the same ticket? You know, the response to Gary Johnson not being libertarian enough is not to support the authoritarian statist Trump. You can't say in one breath that you want to bomb Middle Eastern countries because they're barbarians who mistreat women while defending Donald Trump's remarks about women. Okay? So, what about immigration? Which is it? Are Mexicans lazy welfare queens who are on the dole, or are they hard workers who are taking your jobs? Can you have it both ways? And this reminds me of a great quote from H.L. Mencken, who once said, "As democracy is perfected, the office of the president represents more and more closely the inner soul of the people. On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of the land will reach their heart's desire, and at last, the White House will be adorned by a downright moron." Now, let's talk about open borders. Open borders doesn't mean letting terrorists in or the diseased. It means that governments have no right to stop people who are not criminals or who are not diseased. In fact, governments have no rights at all. Governments only have powers. People have rights. The powers that government has are strictly enumerated, but the rights of all humans, regardless of any nationality, are intrinsic and more numerous than can ever be written down. That's why we have the Ninth Amendment of the Constitution, because the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists, this is getting a little into the weeds here, but when they were preparing to have the Constitutional Convention, there were two types of thinking. There were legal positivists, and there were people who disagreed. A legal positivist is someone who says there is no law but the law that is written down. But someone who believes in natural rights is someone who believes that humans have intrinsic rights and that no human could theoretically write down all of the rights of man. But so the Federalists said, well, we don't need a Bill of Rights, right? You anti-Federalists, you don't believe in legal positivism anyway. You don't believe that your rights need to be written down, so let's not have it. But the anti-Federalists knew that the Federalists would take away their rights if they didn't write them down. So we had the Ninth Amendment. And the Ninth Amendment means that there are more rights that could ever be written down in one single document. So consider this argument about the difference between someone who is a legal positivist and someone who believes in natural rights. And also, don't forget, while you're needlessly terrorizing your fellow citizens about building walls to stop Islamic terrorists, Mexican rapists, and Chinese currency manipulators, that we are also getting doctors, engineers, and software developers immigrating as well. Okay, I'm only going to be in favor of deporting big government voting immigrants when we can deport big government conservatives as well. You know, if I have to put up with my white statist countrymen, I might as well get some curry with it. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, but Hillary's bad. We've got to have Trump. Trump is the lesser evil. Well, but would Trump be better than Hillary? Should libertarians in the Republican Party cede power to Donald Trump and negate the possibility that libertarians and conservatives might soon be united again against a common enemy in Hillary Clinton, instead of divided amongst the principal who refuse to go along with Trump's brand of ethno-nationalist populism that's opposed to free markets and for tariffs and trade wars? Was Alexander Hamilton right when he said, if we must have an enemy at the head of government, let it be one whom we can oppose, and for whom we are not responsible, who will not involve our party in the disgrace of his foolish and bad measures? Economic nationalism, America first. This is the feel-good policy of the right. It's kind of like Marxism. It's not about economics. It's about feelings. Right? It doesn't actually foster growth, prosperity, or social mobility. It just says it does on paper. Only true free markets breed wealth, liberty, and a great deal of social equality. And honestly, I'm not worried about Democrats importing immigrants here to America voting for big government, because how are they any worse than the big government conservatives here who are voting for war, bailouts, stimulus, the drug war, and government intervention into marriage? Besides, what have establishment conservatives done for America lately besides pontificate about the superiority of our exceptional American culture, which has led to nothing more than the white nationalist politics of Donald Trump? And now, what will their pride and haughtiness give us? The worst thing of all, Hillary Clinton. Also, people keep saying that a vote for Gary Johnson is a vote for Hillary Clinton. But if that's true, does that mean a vote for Hillary Clinton is a vote for Justin Amash in 2020? Think about it. Why do we got to choose between the lesser two evils? Why not we just go full-blown evil and vote for Cthulhu in 2016? Or Rick Astley. He's never going to give you up, never going to let you down, never going to run around and desert you. I'm just kidding. All right. Jokes aside. Consider the fact that WikiLeaks revealed that Hillary Clinton's campaign wanted to run against Donald Trump because they were best friends before the campaign. She knew that he would be a weak candidate. But who did she fear? None other than the best GOP candidate that we've seen since Ron Paul, Rand Paul. And why were they afraid of him? It's simple. Because of you. Because of young people. It's because she knew he was a, quote, different kind of Republican. One who appealed to minorities and to women. Yeah, Hillary was afraid of us. Because if our movement had risen, then we would have done what Trump has done to the GOP and remade it into our own image. But that was not to be the case. And 2016 now is a case of dumb versus dumber. Freedom of religion, let's talk about that. Bake the damn Aleppo. The cake, bake the cake. Ask yourself this, do racists have rights? Yeah, they do. That's not very politically incorrect. But yes, racists actually do have rights. And it's not fun defending people's liberty because usually you're defending the scoundrels, the prostitutes, the drug users, the racists. But the problem in the United States today is that we now say that we want to take away somebody's free speech rights because they're an idiot. Well, you're free to be an idiot in the United States, and I'm free to tell you that you are to your face. It's important to defend religious freedom, and I'm going to talk about it in my closing, about the big regret that I have during the campaign, the one regret that I have in losing the nomination. But there is a good reason why we do not have any state religions in the United States. One, because we all need the freedom of religion, and two, because nobody wants the other guy's version of hell or heaven to be enforced at the barrel of a gun. Whenever a political movement starts saying God is on our side, or Deo Vindici, Gott min uns, Allah meana, you can be sure that the killing's about to start. And when the atheists start saying it's the opiate of the masses, you better watch out too. Be careful. Another issue that came up during the campaign, gun rights. Democrats claim that guns were really just meant for hunting, right? Well, they're right, for hunting tyrants. During the Constitutional Convention, George Mason, who was George Washington's hunting buddy, was asked what the militia clause of the Second Amendment meant. And he said explicitly, who is the militia? I asked, who is the militia? It is the whole of the people, minus a few public officials. What does he mean? He means that it is the civilians that are the militia, not the government, only the government, right? And ask yourself this, they say, well, AR-15 ghost guns are so dangerous. Well, if AR-15s are responsible for shootings, are gas chambers responsible for the Holocaust? Has anybody noticed the hypocrisy of liberals on guns? Because to be a modern liberal on guns is to believe that all cops are racists and only they should have guns. Right? Did you guys notice in the final presidential debate how Hillary was extremely concerned about how guns are killing toddlers? And that was really interesting because in contrast with her position that we need to keep partial birth abortions illegal. So save the toddlers, but kill the babies. I'm pro-life, but I'm not religious. I believe in religious liberty, but I'm not a conservative. I'm a libertarian because I believe in freedom for all individuals, including the unborn. And why do I have to define life in order to protect it when you don't have to in order to kill it? A positive secular pro-life ethic is one which looks towards humanity's rightful place spreading into the universe, guardians of the galaxies. Killing our children en masse is no way to ensure a future for human life. The universe and all its planets and stars are man's birthright. I think we should be pro-life in all ways. If government can legalize abortion because abortion is good for society, then why couldn't mandatory abortion be better? These are just logical puzzles that I go over. Back on immigration, I want to talk about the problems of national security and Islamic radicalism. They say that Europe has a problem because of all the influx of Islamic radicals, but Europe has a problem not because of their immigration policies. They have a problem with Islamic radicalism because they have an unlimited welfare state and they have no right to bear arms. So as usual, the problem isn't too much freedom. It's too little. And we don't get our rights from a constitution or because we are U.S. citizens. Our rights are innate, and they spring from our humanity. And thinking about what is government and what should it do, police, fire, military, government of all stripes, technically you would consider them necessary evils, but they are evil. And let's not kid ourselves. The virtue of their existence is that they are formed to maintain our existence. But when they do not suit that end, then the means must always be questioned. Government, if it is to exist, and I acknowledge there is some debate about that, can only ever be a means to an end. Government is a means to an end. The end should be personal liberty. If the means get in the way of the end, then we the people should see fit to alter or abolish it. And if you hate cops, you should love big government, by the way, because that's the best way to get cops killed. Because more laws mean more crime, meaning more dead cops. Of course, if you want fewer people killed and less crime and violence, you could stop punishing people for victimless crimes and let these people go. And, I don't believe in drug testing of welfare recipients because, honestly, I'm sick and tired of the war on drugs in this country being used as an excuse to clamp down on the poor. But I do think we should drug test Congress. We published a story a few months ago on the Libertarian Republic. President Obama's daughter, Malia, caught smoking weed. Ooh. Yeah. And a lot of libertarians, they kind of attacked me. They're like, well, what are you doing, Austin? Like, we think smoking weed is fine, but you shouldn't report on this. She's just being a young girl, blah, blah, blah. No, actually, it is important for us to report that the president's daughter was caught smoking weed because if you think about the DEA recently, they decided not to reschedule cannabis because it's the chewing gang for them and the chain gang for the rest of us. They have one set of rules for themselves and a different set of rules for the rest of us. Just like Obamacare, the Supreme Court exempt, Obama exempt, Congress exempt. I've taken a lot of heat for some of these controversial positions, but truly life, I think, is a lot like a video game. If you're encountering bad guys, you're going in the right direction. Only the nerds get that one. The trouble with fighting for human freedom is that one spends most of one's time defending scoundrels, for it is against scoundrels that oppressive laws are first aimed, and oppression must be stopped at the beginning if it is to be stopped at all. Now, back on the bake the cake issue, I'm just thinking, social justice warrior libertarians come in two flavors. One, lefty libertarians who are going to force you to bake the cake because of expedience and cowardice. And two, those for whom the ideas of liberty have more in common with dogma and cults of personality than with philosophy. If you question their preferential demagogue, you become a pariah. Or if you question the true libertarianism, even on honest devil's advocacy, you are unpure. Well, I prefer heresy to blind obedience to guardians of the one true faith. Self-appointed police of dogma and cults of personality are nothing more than prisoners in Plato's cave. I ran for president of the United States on the platform of taking over government to leave everyone alone, and I did that because I know that it's impossible for one man or woman to know everything. Libertarians understand that politicians who claim to know everything use that fatal conceit to justify their policies, which are meant to run our economy, our foreign policy, and our lives. In regards to the future of our movement, I think that the most dangerous political alliance that could emerge the establishment would be one that involved libertarians and conservatives. Petty libertarian demagogues would fight it for their own selfish inanities, and authoritarian social conservatives would work to sniff out any potential druggies that conflict with their dominionist doctrine. But if we all work together, what a freer country it could be. Now, I want to finish by saying I want to talk about the one sincere regret that I have in losing the nomination. And that was that I had this dream that I could build a libertarian and conservative coalition that would have defied stereotypes on Christians and who they would vote for. Because I wanted to show this country that there was a chance that people of differing faiths or non-faiths could work together to accomplish something revolutionary again, just like we did in our founding. Because for years we've had the moral majority and the religious right who were backing Reagan, and the Republicans had power, and we saw widespread hatred of the LGBT community. But that's since gone away. The old conservative coalitions are gone. The old ideas, the old Buckleyite coalitions of fusionism, fiscal conservatives or libertarians, social conservatives, and foreign policy conservatives, that's all gone. But when people were approaching me and saying, Austin, I never thought I would consider in my entire life that I would vote for someone who doesn't share my faith, but because you defend religious liberty, I would vote for you. And I saw that as a great opportunity and a great missed opportunity. But I think there's still hope, because maybe the spirit of 1776 lives on in 2020. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Standing ovation. All right. Check it out. I want the live streamers to see this. All right, just standing up. We are standing up. That's my first standing ovation now. Great. Okay, guys. Well, I'm here to take your questions. We've got some time. So hammer away. Yes, in the back.
So, in the beginning, you made a claim that we should reclaim the word liberal back to its original sense, live and let live, laissez-faire, all of that. But yet, when you describe the traditional socially conservative, but fiscally do whatever you want, you didn't use the word liberal. You said socially conservative, socially liberal, as long as you don't hurt me. That's kind of a contrast to me. As long as you don't force it on me, is what the reclaimed liberal is. Why shouldn't we use socially liberal and bring our reclaimed sense of the word into it?
Simple tactical awareness. So if I'm speaking to an elevated audience, I'm assuming you're all enlightened, then I figure that the terminology that I use, you'll understand. So when I'm telling you, what I'm telling you is that when you're speaking to people who are perhaps not enlightened, the prisoners in Plato's cave, if you're familiar with that story, then you should perhaps, understand what terminology might be effective with them. But globalization is a big word, right? Globalism, right? People in our own movement saying, there's a great Alex Jones video, Austin Petersen is a tool of the globalists. You know who that is? So it depends on which audience you're speaking to, of course. So in speaking to you, of course, I'll use the terminology that you'll understand. But if we're going to reclaim it, then sometimes what I will do is I will use the shock and awe tactic of saying, yes, I am they'll say, Austin, you just said something nice about Hillary. You're a liberal. I'm like, classical liberal, bitch. Don't you forget it. Pardon language. I don't want to be like Donald Trump. So, yeah, running for president means never being able to say a naughty word ever again. I am terrified when I'm in public of saying a bad word because everything you say can and will be used against you. Right. Any other questions? Quiet audience. Yes, sir. In the badass suit.
I appreciate it. Being that you outlined why you should put Hillary or Trump or Jill Stein, how do you bridge the gap of some defending Bill well as a statist?
Great question. So I didn't support Bill at the convention because what I'd understood of his policies, his gun control policies, turned me off. I dinged Gary in the debate by saying, Gary in 2000 he endorsed, or in 2008 he endorsed Barack Obama. In 2012 he didn't endorse Ron Paul or you. He endorsed Mitt Romney. And in 2016 he endorsed John Kasich. So my question to Gary was, why didn't your VP endorse you? And that kind of stung. But as time's gone on, and I've done a lot more digging into Bill Weld's record as governor of Massachusetts, he cut taxes. As a matter of fact, they tried to raise a cigarette tax to fund preschools, and Bill vetoed it. So fiscally, he's very much one of us. I think that a lot of fear about Bill comes from some of his associations. It becomes a bit of a guilt by association, and they've said nice things about Hillary, which I do not agree with. No, I didn't hear anything about George Soros, but there are libertarians who don't like the Koch brothers. I mean, those are libertarians. I mean, they are Mr. and Mr. Libertarian. So it just depends on, kind of your understanding of these people. Bill Weld is a federal prosecutor, prosecuted public corruption cases. I think he won 115 out of 116 public corruption cases against the government. And he actually forced the Attorney General, Ed Meese, to resign. So there's a lot of good in Bill Weld. Bill Weld would be a better vice president than Tim Kaine or Mike Pence. So, any other questions? Yes, Hans. I have no plans to run. Right now I'm supporting Gary. And the only reason why I ran this year, Hans, is one, I turned 35, so I was like, whatever, Why not? It's legal. Barely legal presidential election. But it just depends on the lay of the land. What if Justin Amash runs? What if Rand runs again? What if we've got a better candidate? Maybe I would be better supporting one of those candidates. And I don't want to run just so I can be a rock star. Running for president sucks, bro. It does. It's horrible. Screenshots upon screenshots upon screenshots. You said this 10 years ago. You dated this person and now they hate you. I felt bad for Trump at certain times. I was like, I know, I didn't say that, but I've said bad words similar, right? So, but if the country needs me, and if I think that the time is right, I might. But right now, I've started up new nonprofit institutions. I ran a surplus on my campaign, which I donated to libertarian candidates. Fiscally conservative, fiscally libertarian. How's that? So my institutions right now are supporting libertarian candidates and causes. And if another challenger emerges and they're much better than I am, then I might be able to use my leverage and power to help that candidate. So if there's nobody better than me, then I might do it. So, yes, sir.
Just comment on some of the international movements in the Libertarian Party right now. I know it's becoming bigger in some other countries. Have you experienced that in your travels?
Yeah, actually, I just got invited to speak at the Friedman Conference in Australia next year. So there does appear to be a burgeoning libertarian movement in Australia. The Students for Liberty is doing terrific work internationally. I think the new president of Students for Liberty is international, right? Who's the new president of? Yeah, Wolf. He's German. So there are libertarians from overseas, and actually the old American liberty is rooted in the old ideas of English liberty in the Magna Carta. So it's not uniquely American, this concept, and truly we're all Africans anyway. But yeah, there is a burgeoning libertarian movement overseas, but they face a much more difficult time because they don't have the type of constitutional protections that we have here in the United States. So if anything, that's what makes America truly exceptional, is our respect for individual rights.
I'm thinking about what happened in Brazil recently.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like the really large, younger libertarian really helped overthrow the government.
They did. There was an 18-year-old libertarian who was the head of the libertarian movement in Brazil that sparked these widespread protests. So yeah, if Trump wins, I might move. Just kidding. I love America. Yes, sir.
Could you tell us about the Stonegate Institute?
Sure. So there actually are 3 nonprofit institutions, all incorporated this summer. The Stonegate Institute is a 501c4. Stonegate PAC is a regular PAC. And 3 weeks ago, we incorporated Loki PAC, which is a super PAC named after the...
He's a frost guy.
I could say frost giant, but I'm pretty sure he was a god. Didn't Hulk beat him up and say puny god? All right, he's a demigod. All right. Well, he was a demigod of mischief. So this new institution just received a quite large donation, so we're using it to support Gary Johnson's campaign. And the Stonegate Institute is going to be working to fight, 5 minutes, working to fight for libertarian causes on the local level. And we just had our first victory. One of our activists brought a team of activists to their local city council representing our institute. They were trying to block medical marijuana in Florida. So they came, they showed up, they protested, and they blocked the bill. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to do. If there's a bag tax, for example, if there's any sort of tyranny that happens, almost all the tyranny that happens is local. So the Stonegate Institute is going to focus on that and build up a new institution that's dedicated to the type of activism that I've had in the last 8 years. So that's what the Stonegate Institute is for. It's named after my family farm where I grew up, the Stonegate Farm and Nursery. So it's actually 3 nonprofit institutions, and I'm very proud to be able to serve the liberty movement in that way. Yes, sir.
Earlier you alluded to better communication skills with the party through the buffer seekers.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask if you had any other tactics that we could push our brand with.
Well, actually, branding is a really important topic. Actually, one of the things that afforded me a little bit more credibility, my detractors were like, "Oh, Austin Petersen, you're just a guy with a blog." Yeah, but it gets 2 million hits a month. But that brand actually was what helped establish some form of credibility because, ignoring all my other resume, shining stars on my resume, of which there are many, not in government service, but I have a long career. A brand is the kind of thing that can help you establish your credibility. And I always tell people, if you're an intern or whatever, start up your own nonprofit. Start up your own LLC. Fake it till you make it, is what they say. Right? So having your own brand is a great way for you to establish yourself and to get more people interested. Also, it's interesting because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jason Stapleton. Good buddy of mine. He's a great libertarian, wonderful speaker. If you haven't, jasonstapleton.com, check him out. We had a conversation. He's like, "Austin, how do you get so much traffic to your websites? How do you reach so many people?" I said, "Well, because my website isn't austinpetersen.com. My website is the Libertarian Republic. And it's about a community, and it's about lifting up other writers. Writers of mine have been featured in the New York Post, the Daily Beast. Glenn Beck has read our stories on the air. And that's because it's all about building up the community. And so if you have a brand that is about a community, then you're going to attract people that are like you. And by lifting up other people, you help yourself. That's how capitalism works. And it's not just about money, it's about experience. And I've had a lot of unpaid interns who have worked for me, who've done work for me, who've gone on to do great things just because they're like, "Oh, you studied under Austin Petersen, great. Well, I'll give you a job at this institute," right? So you can, by helping others, you help yourself. Do what you do best and trade for the rest. And by helping others, you can really establish a good name for yourself. Yes, sir. 3 minutes. Do what the government does, compete against them, essentially. We're not allowed to compete with money, right? So legal tender laws don't allow us to issue our own currency, so we can't compete that way. But what is it that the government does, or what are they claiming to do that you might be able to do through the free market, right? They're used to. What's an old job that people used to think that you couldn't do without the government? The post office, right? Starting a UPS and a FedEx is a great way to take power away from government. Honestly, being a good capitalist is probably one of the best ways that you can help advance libertarian ideas, because then you can turn around and you can fund libertarian nonprofits, or you can use your money for activism. So starting a business is the best way to advance libertarian ideas. Put your ideas into action. And actually, that's what I did. The libertarianrepublic.com is fully for profit. Because I said if our ideas are about capitalism and for profit, well then these ideas should be able to survive in the free market. And after 2 years of being in a basement for 14 hours blogging, it is now a profitable business, and libertarianism is now getting out to millions of people a month. 1 minute, yes. Another question? So start a business. Yeah, Martin.
A lot of your critics accuse you of dwelling in your parents' basement. So just to clarify, this basement that you're blogging from is your own?
Yes, actually. Well, it's more like it's actually more like a really nice production studio that I've built. But it feels like a basement because you can't have any light in, because when you're producing videos, So I do go, like, I sit there, during the day doing my podcast in my boxer shorts, and I do feel a little like in a basement, like a basement dweller. But I assure you, I do not live in my parents' basement. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Austin. My name is Aditya, and I have a question about what you said earlier. You said Trump's trade policies progresses towards isolationism. So can you expand a little bit more on that, if you don't mind?
Certainly. So before an income tax in the United States, we had heavy tariffs. In fact, one of the biggest, almost done, one of the biggest problems that we had that caused the Great Depression was the Smoot-Hawley tariff. So I'd encourage you to look up. It was a fearsome tariff, and it extended and prolonged the Great Depression. I mean, Hillary Clinton, if you read her private speeches, has displayed an economic understanding that Donald Trump has never displayed, right? So tariffs and trade wars lead to isolationism, and Frederick Bastiat once said that when goods and services don't cross borders, armies will. Yep.
But don't you think it's a solution towards the trade deficit that we're facing against countries like China and Mexico?
No, the trade deficit is complete horse hockey, because a trade deficit is the idea that if I buy a cheeseburger from McDonald's, then I'm a trade deficit because I haven't sold them a cheeseburger. And do I have a trade deficit with McDonald's because I haven't sold them back a cheeseburger? No, trade deficits don't matter. It's not like the national deficit. It's a completely different story. The trade deficit doesn't matter because, if you're trading cheeseburgers and you're giving back money, well, you're both profiting, essentially. So when people try and terrify you about the trade deficit, just understand that the trade deficit is not like the national debt deficit. The spending deficit is completely different. All right? Thanks, guys. Let's party.